Welcome to the Productivity Podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Tim Waterton, CRO at HappyOrNot. Hi, Tim.
Hi there, Simon. Great to be here.
Good. Thank you for taking the time out. I know we're all busy. We were talking off air about we wouldn't have placed bets on where we are in the world with all those bits. So I appreciate you taking the time out to chat.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Good. So, Tim, we're going to find out a bit more about HappyOrNot today, all those exciting things you're doing with collecting data from customers and how people can take actions on them. But before that, tell us a bit about yourself. Where's your career been and how's it led you to HappyOrNot?
Yeah, for sure. I guess it's really interesting to get into the customer data space. I've always been in the data space. It's fair to say probably I've been a little bit of a data nerd. The interesting bit when you get into the customer experience data and the feedback market is the data becomes a little bit more interesting. It's a bit more grounded. It's a bit more relatable. Some of the more abstract data forms I've worked with in the past are probably not quite as interesting there. But it's one of those areas where I actually worked for another Finnish company immediately before HappyOrNot, so a company called Files, and we worked in document and information management and core processes. So that kind of introduced me to working with Finnish companies, and HappyOrNot, the Finnish company. So I don't know the joys of Finnair and Helsinki Airport and things like that. Also Finnish train services, which by the way are amazing if you have any experience with British train services. But I still find it quite amusing that the inception of this and HappyOrNot really was the first company that came up with the smiley face terminals. But a smiley face terminal company specializing in emotional feedback actually came out of Finland still astounds me, given the natural Finnish propensity for not providing emotional feedback, perhaps. But it's great place to be, and it's a great set of data to be working with.
So you talked about the smiley faces. People probably recognise those terminals when they've been in train stations, various shops, outlets, airports, etc. Tell us a bit about how you capture the data, the terminals themselves, which are the buttons we press or the screens we press now, and how all that flows through.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, HappyOrNot started probably 10 years ago with the kind of inception of, I guess, the iconic terminal. 4 buttons, 4 smiley emojis, green to red, customer feedback capture. The goal was really clear, right? To make it easy for customers to share their thoughts. HappyOrNot now, I think, serves just over 4,000 brands, 100 plus countries, and we've collected 2 billion plus amounts of feedback. Obviously, over that time, the collection methods have evolved, right? So we've gone from that simple terminal button press device, and we've added in tablet-based kiosk options, basically a touch range, which allows a slightly more richer set of questions. But I'll come back to that a bit later because it's important that you don't go too far with complexity.
Yep.
And then we've added other things to that as well. So we've added digital options, we've added embeddable options so people can drop stuff into their own kiosks. And we now move, further and further towards intelligent signage options as well. So the key is being able to capture the right stuff in the right place at the right time and to have a collection fabric that's varied enough to allow you to fit in a form factor for most deployment scenarios.
Yeah,
so that's kind of the front end and the capture side.
And then, as ever with these things, I assume there's a portal behind that's got analytics, got data in for the more, I suppose, serious data people that aren't capturing on the front end to understand that data and do something with it.
100%. So one way of looking at it is we have obviously our own web app, our own mobile app, we've got our own analytics environment. That typically gets deployed by the small to medium businesses and by the front line and the operational teams in the field for larger organizations. Many of our customers pull our data out via API and pull it into their own BI platforms, and they slice and dice it every which way from Sunday and correlate it with other business metrics, operational metrics that are really important. And some of the events that we can just touch on this again, I guess, a little bit later, but some of the events that we generate are very relevant to real-time action. So we're able to integrate with lots of other applications for alerting mechanisms. So, for example, if you see a particular set of conditions occur that are deviating from the norm in a particular location, we can generate an alert and pipe that to anything, generate a trouble ticket, pipe it to Slack, pipe it to Teams. What we generally find is we appeal tremendously now to the operational side of the business rather than just the insight side of the business. So it's not about retrospective insights and an analysis of a report, of data surfaced in a report for the last 3 months. It's quite often real-time notification of something that happened in the last 3 minutes. So that's why we tend to tap into the operational side a bit more. So that's the general consumption model.
Yeah, no, that makes sense that operations are becoming more involved. You know, an operator myself in a previous life, I'd say they're the heartbeat of most organizations, and clearly where the buck stops as well. So, you know, that toilet you're getting bad feedback on in X environment, I assume then you can push something to say, you know, 4 customers in the last Y have told you that there's a problem here. Can you go and send somebody to go and fix it? And that stuff's invaluable, isn't it? Because all you're going to do is just rack up more negative sentiment the longer that problem goes on, certainly in an airport environment where there's potentially nowhere else to go.
Yeah, 100%. One example I tend to think about is even in a grocery environment. We've got a grocery customer in the US who actually instruments the valuable areas of their business. So the specialty areas, if you like, around the edge of store. So their delicatessen counter, their meat counter, their pastry counter, their bakery, etc. So those are the higher margin goods, and they tend to be a little bit more consultative, particularly kind of meat and deli and fish. That's where they generate a huge amount of their margin. So they actually instrument those areas, and they use real-time alerts. So if they see people complaining about kind of queuing situations at those high margin stations, that's something that they can jump in on straight away. You're not really going to do it down center aisle, but in that area, it makes a whole load of sense to do it. So it's not just about the toilets, and with the full range of the collection fabric now, we're able to really instrument a store. So particularly by using signage to complement devices, depending on where you are, we can actually really instrument each particular department or area of the store.
And that's back to those friction points for customers, isn't it? So we might not see it. We're all customers and we feel it, but when we're in business mode, maybe we don't see it as much, certainly if you're in there day to day. So dealing with those friction points, taking something, moving that feedback forward clearly must be a competitive advantage from a happier customers. I assume spend more or come back.
Yeah, I think come back is probably the key. So retention is actually lifetime value, and retention is the really, really key one. And to that end, customers respond really well to being heard. So they feel they're being heard if they're giving feedback. But what we notice more than anything else is the part of the programs that we run out with our larger customer is a You Said We Did program. So we encourage our larger, in fact, we provide templates for doing this, where we'll provide summaries of the items that they should be addressing, and then they can pull those kind of lists out, and they've usually responded to the top 2 or 3 things. And then they typically post signage, sometimes digital, sometimes physical, that actually closes the loop with customers and said, you told us that this particular item was an issue, and this is what we've done for you. And I think when you close that loop with your customers, that really does reinforce the fact that you're listening. You're not just asking questions, because it sounds like a good idea to ask the questions, but you're asking questions and you're taking action on it. And
Excellent.
that really cements it. But I mean, standard CX stuff, I guess, but it's still important to get done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those classics. If you can ask for feedback, do something with it, or don't ask me for feedback because it's a waste of everybody's time. Is the reality.
Yes.
And just talk to me about kind of response rates in location, in moment feedback, because I know, I'm sure like you, I've shopped in lots of places where at the end of the journey, I've got to scan this code and fill me in 10, 20, 30 questions that are probably important to that organization, not necessarily important to me. But a lot of that is based on my last point of interaction, which is typically the checkout. So that there can be quite a strong bias in some of those to how good your checkout experience was or wasn't. So just talk about, because you say you've kind of described yours placed in various locations, real quick mechanism to capture that feedback. So that emotional, in the moment micro piece, and does that tend to drive higher volumes for you?
Absolutely, it does. Every single customer we work with is shocked by the kind of volume that we generate. I'm shocked. They expect to get that. And I think that's because we don't always replace traditional surveys. In many cases, we go alongside traditional surveys to complement it. But what people are not getting from traditional surveys and follow-up email surveys, etc., is pure volume and contextual relevance. So as you said, if the last thing you do is you leave the store and then you get a big survey quite often delivered via email, you don't really remember an awful lot about what happened in that shopping experience, to be quite frank about it. It's almost the exit that you kind of remember. Whereas if you're actually capturing stuff in the moment at the point of service, you can ask a question that's relevant to that point, and you can make it very, very short and sharp. And therefore, it's very, very easy to provide relevant feedback. So key one is point of service versus after the fact. That's really key. In context rather than out of line. So if you ask a survey, I don't know if you've noticed this, but when you get email surveys, in an era of like hyper personalization, or just let's call it personalization, I'll take the hyper out of it. But in an era of personalization where we expect that, have you noticed in surveys the number of times that you get asked, which of our stores did you visit? What day did you visit? And which department did you visit? And what did you contemplate buying? And actually, the first 5 or 6 questions are just establishing some kind of context so that they can put business metadata on it and be able to interpret it. Well, frankly, we don't have the attention span to deal with that anymore. 6 questions and I'm done. So I've not even answered one of the next 25 about what the experience was like that I barely remember. Most of it is just about context. So for us, we already have context because we know exactly where we are. We know what that experience point is. The survey is very specific to that experience point. And then survey structure is key for us. We believe in microfeedback 100%. And our definition for that is the first question, which is simply respond via an emoji, because we know how it is, right? It's just dead easy. It's culturally agnostic. It's language agnostic. And then ideally 1 follow-up question, possibly 2 follow-up questions, with always the option for somebody to provide a verbatim. And the verbatim is the real key to this as well, because if you can get to that verbatim feedback and people will type and share verbatims, that information is free and unstructured. And it's the closest thing to telling you what kind of action you can take to remediate something. By the way, I say remediate something. It's amazing how many times people give positive feedback. So one of the biggest attributes that we find that shocks people is people turn around and call out members of staff for doing really good stuff.
Yeah.
So we're able to identify that and go back and say, like, go to Sally and turn around and say to her, you did a great job with this customer. You got some really specific praise. And our customers love that bit, right? It's not the bit that they come to us for in the first place, but suddenly realize just how valuable it is in closing the loop with their own staff when they've done good stuff.
Yeah, I wouldn't say a nice byproduct is probably the wrong terminology, but an unintended consequence of capturing the data, but a positive one nevertheless. And I find that really interesting because I suppose at a cynical level, if it was 4 emojis, I'd be saying, okay, Tim, that's great. So what? You tell me it's not great. You tell me it's great. I can't do anything with it. So that follow-up questions, those verbatim comments, good, bad, indifferent, I think colour that picture in. So at a top line, we know it's good, bad, indifferent, but then actually now we can start to get to the richness of the so what. And I assume your customers find that really, really valuable to be able to then turn those into action-orientated insights to the teams, whether things to the centre, whether that be buying, merchandising, pricing, whatever it is.
Yeah, and typically our customers will deploy a hybrid. So really busy grocery store, it makes a lot of sense just to have a button terminal on the exit where the question turns around and say, how do we do? That gives you a good idea about how you're doing generally in serving customers across the day, across the days of the week. But there's nothing actionable out of that. But it's really good to be able to calibrate roughly what experience you're delivering over time. But it's the verbatim feedback and the follow-up questions at the other points in the store that allow you to drive immediate action from it. So one's really good for time series deviation detection.
Yep.
The other one's great for driving the action. But it's definitely a hybrid in the collection fabric and hybrid in the approach.
And I want to touch on the future in a second, and of course we'll talk about AI because everybody's talking about AI. But just want to circle back on, so kind of things like, if I was working back in retail, the things that would be going through my mind would be, okay, so is this difficult to install? Do I need to do a load of wiring in the stores because that's really tricky? Is it simply plug in and play? Is it easy to update questions, add a question, remove a question? So if you just kind of, again, fill in a bit of colour on that for us.
Yeah, well, of course I'm going to answer that. It's absolutely seamless. You know how to do anything. But actually, it's as close to that as you can get. It is as close to that as you can get. The devices are shipped to store, boxed, install instructions, etc. They're actually pre-configured. So they're pre-configured as experience points with surveys preloaded. So it's a case of an assembly which even takes a fool like me, less than a couple of 3 minutes to put together, and then power up, auto connection, survey, auto load, smiley faces come up, you're good to go. The ongoing side is great. I think there's a lot of approaches in the market. We believe that customers should be able to completely self-manage if they need to. Funnily enough, our largest customers quite often self-manage, and our smallest customers tend to self-manage. And in the middle, we tend to do quite a lot more hand-holding. Not too sure why that is. It's not entirely logical, but tends to be the case. But people are completely able to self-manage, so they can set their schedules, they can set their surveys, they can set surveys to change according to particular schedules, etc. They can attach surveys to particular experience points or groups. Full academy training available, and obviously customer success to support behind that if people get a little bit stuck or they want some further advice or they want some best practice advice. So it's very easy to literally grab it, go power it up and just get up and running. And then you can move into kind of more advanced functions, self-serve by the academy or with us helping you out.
So a myriad of options, but as close to plug-in and play as practically possible. Yes,
absolutely. I mean, the one area that's kind of really interesting around the signage space is, and that's an area where we're kind of exploring more detail, is people talk about QR codes and how you can kind of work in this space and assume that if you give a large organization some QR codes, that they're going to be able to come up with some intelligent signage with some good designs and the right form factors in the right place and deploy it. But if you've ever tried trying to hook up with the marketing department, the brand team, etc., within a large organization and turn around and say, I've got 25 QR codes here and I really would like these deployed in this way, etc., good luck with that because you'll be about 12 months.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we've worked out that the real skill to that one is we've developed that expertise in building, I guess, the smart signage that we do with our customers in a kind of consultative way. So that helps us expand that collection fabric in that signage area, because firing people a few QR codes or different mechanisms, it's so hard to get a project rolled out in almost any organization today. Nobody's sitting around on their hands waiting for something to do.
Yeah.
It's another area where we provide a full fat service, if you like, rather than just give you something and say get on with it.
In the future then, so I assume AI features in there somewhere?
Yeah, I'd get shot if I turned around and said I didn't have an AI strategy. Yeah, everybody has. It's a really, I don't know, it's a really interesting area. There's AI without the ability to influence the top line or the bottom line, quite honestly, is a bit of fun right now. So much AI capability, but where do you get the rubber on the road? I think that's the real key. And we're fortunate. We're in a place where, it's quite natural for us. Obviously, the first place comes into verbatim. So suddenly something that was unbelievably complex and difficult to deal with, like natural language processing beforehand, becomes far easier with access to large language models. So that's key for us. We already post-process all of our verbatim. We categorize them based upon vertical market sensitivity points. So, for example, in a food environment, and we do quite a lot in food service, which is essentially retail in the food and beverage space. It makes sense when you're capturing feedback there to be able to classify your verbatims to price, value, cleanliness, service. So we're really good at categorization. That's a natural thing for us to do. So we provide summaries, we provide monthly summaries, lots of different variations there. Categorization is really key. And I think the other bit that becomes really interesting is once you start to use AI to correlate your time series data with your qualitative feedback as well. So using time series anomaly detection to pick up deviations and then match deviations back to what's happening to what are the statements being made in various parts of the store at that particular point in time, which kind of brings you onto the concept of correlation with sales data, staffing data, footfall data, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that certainly in a world where everybody's experienced cost challenges with NI, so any employer's got that double whammy of the when we've talked about it a lot on the podcast, but they've experienced the threshold dropping and then the percentage going up. So 2 hits, correlating that with your rotas, schedules to see is there a correlation of, an uplift in sentiment, in happiness of customers at certain points, a downshift. Is that because you've got back staffing too much? There's lack of availability, you've closed checkouts, you've changed your offer. I think that's the gold dust that some organisations are on the edge of. Some are starting to creep into it. Others probably haven't even considered it because there's too much other stuff going on. But when we're in a world of dealing with, and probably ongoing, less colleagues on the floor in food service, in retail, wherever, these fine marginal gains are going to be so much more valuable because all the easy stuff's been done.
Absolutely. It's really easy to sit there and turn around and say, what does 1 point mean? But 1 point means a heck of a lot. Really, really means a lot when you're resource constrained. And I think it's going to get, and this is a little bit more of an out there statement, so I wouldn't take it as being anything close to gospel, but I think what's held people back in correlating the various types of data that have been available is it's hard work, right? Building data warehouses is hard work. Data quality is hard work. Piping it from various sources and integrating it is hard work. And then even visualizing it is actually quite hard work. I'm not too sure, but most people in most organizations kind of have got chartophobia because they just see so many charts all the time, and it drives you mad. But you can see a situation probably over the next year or two where data is going to be exposed through agents, and I think we hear so much about agentic AI and agents cooperating, and that makes perfect sense. But I think we'll also see that orchestrated. So the larger organizations are going to be investing in kind of orchestration platforms that will be there to get various agents communicating. And I can see an environment where our data might be surfaced by an agent that will talk to a sales data agent, that will talk to a scheduling agent, that will talk to, and actually that's going to be orchestrated. So instead of having to write incredibly complex SQL queries with complex joins and star query schemas and everything being fixed, I can see a more dynamic data fabric where it's going to be so much easier for people to ask questions of, I have a drop in sales on Thursday that is unaccountable. Can you tell me what my scheduling looked like at that particular point in time? And can you check in with customer experience data to find out whether we saw a drop in sentiment as well at the same time? And I could see that. We're talking a couple of years out, but it's the pace at which that's moving I could genuinely see that starting to happen. And I think it'll open that capability to companies that just couldn't get it done before because it was just too much heavy lifting.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, as ever with those things, the first set of outputs are probably things that are going to shock, expose, make people feel uncomfortable because they've never been able to get there and join all those points, like you say, without an army of people or big software budgets or investments. So I'd encourage people, you've kind of got to ride that, because once you get through those initial shock pain points, you'll really then start to move forward. But yeah, I agree. It's coming. Every day you see something different, don't you, in terms of where the tech's going, somebody new, excuse me, a new name. It is a world that people need to be on board with, not necessarily be in it right away, but be watching very closely when the time for them is to jump in and start to utilise.
Yeah, and I'm kind of closing the loop with something that you said earlier. We were talking about, or maybe I said, I'm not too sure. But when we were talking about positive feedback versus critical feedback, and the fact that we find that our customers tap into that positive feedback and see it as being incredibly valuable, even if it wasn't what they were looking for beforehand. They were looking for problems to fix, and then they find people to praise. I think as we see these more advanced data correlations come out, and there'll be some shocks in there in terms of what they'll expose, as you kind of highlighted, I think it will also show what good practice looks like.
Yeah.
And then training out good practice is just as important as looking to fix bad practice. And again, we find that quite regularly, that there's a natural coupling between what we do and frontline staff training. And at the end of the day, frontline staff is where the rubber meets the road, because that is where your brand gets its personification. That's where you interact with the brand in store. So always got a massive amount of respect for frontline staff and how much they have to get done and how multidisciplined they've got to be, and what I'm like as a member of the general public to deal with, how challenging I am. So they obviously need a lot of training. Funnily enough, from a partnership side, we get approached by, and we're exploring some really solid partnerships with training companies, because that verbatim data surfaces where there are little weak spots, and weak spots usually are not because somebody wanted to be weak, it's just they didn't know what they were supposed to do next. And so they see it as an opportunity for reinforcement training for frontline staff, so to actually guide the scheduling of training into particular regions or districts on particular topics.
Again, makes complete sense in a world where we've probably got to be more multi-skilled because there's just less of us. So we need to know more, keep that intelligence up to date, and there'll be more new stuff coming down the line as offers grow, offers change, etc., for people to keep competitive. Tim, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat. If people want to find out more, interact with you, where's the best place for them to find you?
On LinkedIn or HappyOrNot website, or speak to any of us. Literally anybody at HappyOrNot is more than happy to have a conversation with anybody. So LinkedIn's probably the best one.
Okay,
so
we'll post your profile. We'll post your profile. We'll put a link to the website on the show notes so people can easily find you. Thanks once again. Fascinating chat, and we'll catch up soon.
Perfect. Really enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Simon.